Okay, so picture this. You've got a massive US tech company, a military partnership that's been going on for decades, and then one sudden, really controversial decision that sends shockwaves through the entire industry. Today, we're breaking down Microsoft's unprecedented move to cut some of its key services to the Israeli military. It's a decision that's forcing a really tough conversation about the role of big tech in modern warfare. So let's get into it.
And really, this whole thing boils down to this one fundamental question. This isn't some theoretical debate anymore. The lines between technology, ethics, and actual warfare are getting blurrier by the day. We're going to explore how Microsoft tried to navigate this very question.
All right, so first up, let's just look at what actually happened. Because this wasn't just some minor policy update. This was a major pivot from one of the most powerful companies on the planet.
To really get why this was such a huge deal, you gotta look at the history. For decades, Microsoft and Israel's Ministry of Defense had this really stable partnership. And then, bam, the announcement that would change everything. The plan, reportedly, is to cut access to specific high-tech AI and cloud services starting in September 2025. After all that time, this was a pretty dramatic public break.
And that right there is why this story just blew up. This move was, well, truly unprecedented. It seems to be the first time a major US tech company has publicly pulled services from the Israeli military while a conflict is ongoing. It sets a whole new potential precedent for how corporations get involved in global politics.
But of course, a decision this big doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It was actually the result of this powerful mix of forces, both inside and outside the company, that put Microsoft in a really, really tough spot.
So what exactly caused this big shift? Well, the pressure was coming from literally everywhere at once. You had protests from Microsoft's own employees, huge public outcry, and these highly organized campaigns from advocacy groups like No Azure for Apartheid, who were targeting Microsoft's cloud platform specifically. Then you add in critical media reports and this growing fear inside the company about what this was doing to their reputation, and you've got a perfect storm.
Technology analyst Rob Enderle kind of summed it up perfectly. He said Microsoft's leadership found itself between a rock and a hard place. Think about it. On one side, you have this incredibly lucrative military contract. On the other, this immense risk of serious reputational damage. It's that classic standoff between profit and public perception.
But to really understand this decision, you have to dig into the fine print. This wasn't a total breakup, not at all. The action Microsoft took was much more surgical.
And this is where we really see Microsoft's strategy. They made a very specific cut. They disabled certain cloud and AI services that were at the center of the controversy. But, and this is so important, the bigger commercial relationship, that's still intact. It was like a targeted strike right at the heart of the problem, not a complete withdrawal.
And this is where it gets even trickier. Microsoft's official line was that their own internal review didn't find any direct proof its tech was used to harm civilians. But, and this is a big but, the company also went on the record and acknowledged that some of the claims being made were credible. It's a really careful tightrope walk, and it just shows you how hard it is to get a clear picture in the middle of a conflict.
So, naturally, a move this big did not land quietly. The reaction was immediate and just deeply divided. It split right down the middle between praise and some pretty sharp criticism.
So on one side, for a lot of people, this was a landmark moment. Supporters were praising the move as this huge step forward for corporate responsibility. Their argument was that tech companies have an ethical duty to make sure their products aren't being used to cause harm.
The activist groups that have been pushing for this for so long felt like their hard work had paid off. An organizer with No Azure for Apartheid, Hossam Nasser, even called it a significant victory. But he also made a point to say that it didn't go all the way, since, a lot of other contracts with the Israeli military were still active. But then you have the flip side. There was criticism, not so much of the outcome, but of how they got there. Some people argued that the disruptive nature of the protests, blocking offices and traffic, actually turned off potential allies. They felt it shifted the focus away from the core ethical debate and more onto the tactics themselves. So let's zoom out. What does all of this mean for the future? Well, this one decision by Microsoft kind of rips the lid off a much bigger conversation about the role of tech, and especially artificial intelligence, in modern warfare.
And this quote from Richard Moyes, it really gets to the heart of the ethical problem here. When military operators start to rely on AI for targeting recommendations, does it start to diminish human judgment? Does it create this dangerous distance from the real-world consequences, turning people into, as he puts it, cogs in a mechanized process?
And this all leads to what people are calling a massive accountability gap. I mean, think about it. If an AI targeting system makes a mistake, and that mistake leads to civilian casualties, who's actually responsible? Is it the human analysts who just clicked accept on the AI's recommendation? The programmers who wrote the code? What about the intelligence officers who trained the system with data? There are just no easy answers.
And check this out. Here's a wild, forward-looking thought. We are seriously heading toward a future where two opposing armies could be running their military operations on the exact same commercial cloud platform, like Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services. I mean, that completely changes the whole landscape of warfare and raises all these new questions about corporate power in a conflict.
Ultimately, what Microsoft's decision does is it drags this question out of the world of theory and drops it right into the middle of the real world. As AI becomes just another tool on the battlefield, figuring out who's responsible for its actions, well, that's not just an ethical debate anymore. It's one of the most urgent challenges of our time. And the answer is nowhere in sight.